Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate, just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
And my boss even treated me like shit when I tried to call in sick with it once. And it went like this. It went, brrr. Hey, boss. Yeah, I'm not coming in today, man. My alcoholism's really acting up. Yeah, I went out all night last night. Yeah, I'm not coming in tomorrow either because I'm going to do some coke tonight. I know you're going to want me to take the customary week off because of my handicap. But I'm going to come in at Friday at 3 p.m. because that's the kind of guy I am. Oh, we get off at noon on Friday? Well, I'm going to take a couple sick days off next week because I'm going to get an 8-ball this weekend. Hello? Hello? Mom? Mom? Hang up.
Good morning. It's Saturday, Rules Saturday, October the 4th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have no free lunch, motivation, meditation, and return of the primitive. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you, and now there's no free lunch. 250 Economic Truths by David Bahnsen.
The opening up of new markets, foreign or domestic, and the organizational development from the craft shop and factory to such concerns as U.S. Steel illustrate the same process of industrial mutation that incessantly revolutionizes the economic structure from within, incessantly destroying the old one, incessantly creating a new one. This process of creative destruction is the essential fact about capitalism. It is what capitalism consists in and what every capitalist concern has got to live in. Capitalism requires the perennial gale of creative destruction. Joseph A. Schumpeter. I cannot improve upon this. It is descriptive of the system that is free enterprise, but it also identifies one of the major ingredients of success embedded in free enterprise. That essential fact is cause for celebration in any objective macro sense, and every one of us lives under the privilege and comfort this creative destruction has produced for centuries.
And that was There's No Free Lunch by David Bahnsen. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from the book Rules for Anti-Radicals, Chapter 6, Economic Action. Politics is downstream from culture, and the liberal shareholders have been dominating the corporate proxy vote to advance policies they otherwise could not achieve through the legislative or political process. Justin Danoff. Economic action refers to the use of economic measures to impact the behavior of a target. When conducting economic action, your goal is to make a demand and force the target to capitulate either to the demand or a fallback demand that gives you more than you had to begin with. Unfortunately, the left learned long ago the value of boycotting entities they find offensive and have increasingly used economic action to advantage over recent decades, particularly to bypass the legislative process for measures that lack popular support. Thanks to increasing left-wing economic action and its sibling, cancel culture, we've reached a point at which corporations reflexively capitulate to leftist threats. Types of economic action. Although boycotts are what most people think of when targeting corporations, they are only one in a broad array of available tactics, including proxy campaigns, demonstrations, employee slowdowns, and social media shaming. Outside versus inside operations. Some methods of economic action work from the outside of the target organization, some from the inside, with the latter almost uniformly ignored by conservatives. Boycotts. As an activist manual put it, a boycott, like a strike, is similar to a revolver with one bullet in the chamber. As the most visible type of economic action, boycotts are the obvious choice for activists looking to change corporate behavior. A particularly effective tactic is to send business to a competitor of the target which is not engaged in the egregious behavior you seek to change. Corporate proxy campaigns. Hats off to Saul Alinsky, who started using shareholder proxy fights to twist arms at corporations such as Eastman Kodak decades before the internet made it easier. At the most basic level, here's how a proxy campaign works. 1. Decide what corporate behavior you want to change. 2. Get lots of shareholders to give you their proxies. 3. Go to the annual meeting of the corporation and make your demand or proposal, voting the proxies for your demand if necessary. Alinsky claimed to have invented proxies for people, the use of shareholder proxy campaigns to impact the behavior of corporations. How effective has it been? Given that we now have woke, green, fair trade, and socially responsible corporations pushing diversity and equity even when it negatively impacts corporate earnings, and that we even have socially responsible mutual funds, it's clear that leftists dominate corporate America. Writing in The Hill, Justin Danoff, director of the Free Enterprise Project, said, quote, "The left dominates the shareholder proposal space, annually filling 95% of environmental, social, and governance proposals," unquote. As a result, says Danoff, dozens of corporations are donating to Planned Parenthood, banks are cutting off services to Second Amendment organizations, and major corporations have donated massive sums to the leftist and arguably fraudulent Southern Poverty Law Center. Until I researched this book, even I didn't realize how pervasive the tactic had become, but it quickly made sense to me why so many companies have become woke. Fortunately, conservative proxy campaigns are finally starting to recapture lost ground. As a resource, consider the Conservative National Center for Public Policy Research and its Free Enterprise Project, which describes itself as the conservative movement's only full-service shareholder activism and education program. Corporations the FEP has gone after include AT&T, CVS, Caremark, Pfizer, and the North Face, among others. Particularly interesting is the FEP Annual Investor Value Voter Guide, described by FEP Director Justin Danoff as the antidote to stop the woke train in its tracks. Danoff goes on to say, conservatives have been ignoring corporate proxy ballot votes for decades, and it's to our own peril. As a final aside, I would recommend anyone who wants to start gathering proxy to use a tool Alinsky didn't have available to him, Facebook. And that is part of Chapter 6 from the book Rules for Anti-Radicals by F. Paul Vallone. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Rules for Retrogrades.
Rule 12. Radicals form coalitions, but retrogrades form fellowships. A coalition is a group of persons who are working together for a common, intermediate purpose, but who are simultaneously working in solitary capacities for divergent, and sometimes even diametrically opposed, final purposes. Coalitions ape authentic human fraternity, but in reality, they tend to absolutize the individual, reducing peer coalition members to mere tools to be used in achieving a desired cause. Footnote: when people cooperate solely for the purpose of achieving a joint end, and not on the basis of love for God and one another, they belittle human dignity by treating each other as means rather than ends. Since God willed man's existence for the sake of man himself, it is improper to ever treat a person as a mere means. He must always be treated as an end, or else we run afoul of divine will. End of footnote. Once peer coalition members have served their purpose in achieving the intermediate cause, they may be discarded and even reviled as their usefulness has deteriorated. The dynamic between the demons in hell is akin to a coalition. Each fiend has only one true priority, himself, yet he bands together with and uses his fellow reprobates to achieve his intermediate purpose, rebellion against God. If it were possible for the demons to overthrow God, and if they achieved such arch sacrilege, they would immediately set about quarreling with each other as they pursued their individuated goals. A fellowship, on the other hand, is a group of persons cooperating for a mutual final purpose. Fellowships represent an authentic and salutary form of human fraternity, magnifying the human spirit and encouraging men to recognize the common destiny of the human race. Members of fellowships don't use each other to achieve a purpose. Instead, they cooperate in a spirit of charity, viewing the good of their peers as an end in and of itself, alongside their final goal. The dynamic between the angels in heaven is reminiscent of a fellowship. The angels are united to one another in confraternity and service, owing to their common purpose, the glorification of God Almighty. Since each angel wills, in addition to God's glory, the good of his fellows, Even if it were possible for God to cease to be, and if God did in fact cease to be, each angel would continue to live in harmony with the other members of the heavenly host. So, while both coalitions and fellowships are species of focused special interest groups, they are as different as night and day. To be sure, the distinction between coalitions and fellowships is more than purely pedantic. It has real-world import, of which the retrograde must be aware. Radicals have no moral qualms about cobbling together coalitions of men who will today be co-workers but will tomorrow be enemies. For radicals, any means may be used to achieve an end deemed worthy or desirable. For radicals, even people themselves may be used as means. In practice, this means that a radical can work together with an opposing party, perhaps even a virtual enemy, if it helps bring about a desired result in the short term. Footnote. Note on a pragmatic level that modern history is replete with cautionary examples for why such a course of action should be avoided. After partnering with the Soviet Union to defeat the Axis in World War II, America had to immediately pivot to fighting fraught proxy wars against its previously allied coalition member. After partnering with Osama bin Laden to defeat the Soviets in Cold War-era Afghanistan, America had to crush an al-Qaeda organization that it had personally armed and sponsored. End of footnote. Hence, in the radical worldview, the homosexual activist and the fundamentalist Muslim can associate in a coalition dedicated to defeating their common enemy, Christendom. It matters not to the homosexual or the Muslim, for the time being, that the homosexual believes that the Muslim is repressed by archaic fideism, and that the Muslim believes the homosexual should be subject to the lash for his flamboyance. It matters not to the homosexual that the Muslim has in mind the terminal purpose of creating a worldwide caliphate. It matters not to the Muslim that the homosexual activist has in mind the terminal purpose of creating a worldwide regime of hedonism and licentiousness. These ephemeral allies are able to make use of each other and aid each other, despite their natural opposition, in bringing about a mutually desired intermediate goal on the way to divergent final goals. The radical camp is full of coalitions, anarchists and statists, feminists and Muslims, nation-states and illegal immigrants, trans rights activists and women's rights activists. All of these groups are naturally antonymic, yet all are cooperating to swing the culture leftward. Once they have defeated their common ideological enemies, they will battle each other for supremacy, like the communists fought with the Nazis for control of the left in post-World War I Germany. However, coalitions are anathema to the retrograde. The retrograde knows that he can do no evil so that good may come of it, that ends never justify means. The retrograde does not want to help, even accidentally, even far in the future, others achieve goals that are dissonant with his own ideology, which he considers sacrosanct. Instead, he wants to band together with like-minded men, so that in a true spirit of solidarity, they can intertwine their lives and honor in service of a common ideal, in service of those things which are transcendental, objective, and eternal, truth, goodness, and beauty. There's something treacherous and hateful to the man of goodwill to one day fight alongside a man that on the next day he will oppose. Further, as rooted as the retrograde is in Christianity, he knows that men are never to be viewed as means to an end, but only as ends in and of themselves. He therefore desires not to make use of other men, but to serve alongside them, sharing conviviality, mirth, sorrow, joy, and the full range of human affect en route to final communion. Beyond these abstractions, there is a simple and gritty fact that the retrograde should take time to digest. In the long run, coalitions don't work. While fellowships are by nature relational, coalitions are mechanical. Coalitions are prone to factiousness and infighting, since maintaining order and cohesion in a body made up of a motley assortment of ideological actors with deviating interests is an exercise in futility. True friendships are grounded in a pair's mutual love of truth and virtue. In a coalition setting, where most have disparate understandings of truth and misapprehensions of virtue, authentic friendship will be scarce and morale will suffer for it. It is axiomatic that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. The links of a chain forged without friendship are brittle and rupture readily. So, since coalitions aren't predicated on authentic friendships, they can only be effective in the short term, till they collapse in cannibalism. Like Master Yoda says of the dark side, when Luke Skywalker asks if it's more powerful than the light, no. Quick.
And that was Rule 12 of Rules for Retrogrades, 40 Tactics to Defeat the Radical Left by Timothy J. and David R. Gordon. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from Waking the Sleeping Giant, in the chapter Understanding Political Power, tactic number 3, play the victim game. Related to the tactic of polarizing groups is the even more sinister method of singling out some groups to be villains in the political drama and casting others as helpless victims. Leftists reassure the selected victim group that the villains have oppressed them and must be made to pay. In so doing, the left plays to the basest and meanest side of humanity, the side that envies the accomplishments of others, the side that wants revenge or an easy way out. And of course, the left positions themselves as the heroes in the drama. They will make everything right for the victim and punish the villain. All the liberals need in return is for the victims to vote for the liberal heroes, to give them power and resources, and above all, not to question their authority or, apparently, their results. And no bounds of logic or reason can interfere with the left when playing the victim game. A black female banker who starts her own business can easily fall into multiple categories. As a black female, she's the victim of white males. As a banker and entrepreneur, she's a villain who oppresses poor people and employees of her business. Bankers are painted as villains by the left when they engage in sound lending practices, and as victims deserving a bailout when they make bad loans. On the surface, trying to follow liberal logic is as exhausting as trying to follow Bill Clinton at a beauty pageant. There's so many sudden pivots and switchbacks. But beneath the surface contradictions, we find a common factor. All liberal positions are designed to increase the power of liberals over the rest of us. As long as the votes and contributions roll in, neither consistency nor consequences seem to matter to the hardcore left. Besides, liberals have another tactic that absolves them of any responsibility for inconsistency or hypocrisy. And that's tactic number 4, words mean what liberals want them to mean. Mainstreamers are often struck by the inconsistency between the way the liberals use words and what those words actually mean. For example, we've already mentioned racist as one of the most commonly used words in liberal speech. What is stunning about the liberal use of the word, however, is it actually has nothing to do with racism. Racists, sexists, and haters, oh my. If you're opposed to preferential treatment based on race, you're branded a racist. If a liberal black politician makes an absurd statement and you point out the absurdity of the statement, you are called a racist. On the other hand, if you argue for preferential treatment or tolerate absurdity because the speaker is a black liberal, then according to liberals, you're an enlightened champion for racial equality. Even more bizarre is the left's use of the word racist is the issue in question usually doesn't have to do with race in any way. Jimmy Carter's trained nose sniffed out the fumes of racism in the mainstream's opposition to Obamacare. That's it. But if you don't want some Washington bureaucrat making decisions about your family's health care, you must be a racist. Liberals routinely describe as sexist anyone who thinks that men and women differ in their predispositions to math and science skills. And never mind the fact that women outperform men on measures of verbal achievement. It's hard to convince people that they've been victims of oppression if you mention that they outperform the group that is supposedly oppressing them. The mainstream would reserve the use of the term sexist for anyone who believes that women are inferior to men, like having to cover their faces in public. The inconsistency disappears obviously when we realize that liberals don't use word to communicate ideas and convey information the way the rest of us do. Liberals use words as either carrots or sticks. That is, as a way of manipulating others. Words have only one purpose for liberals, and that is increasing their power and control. Calling names to create a diversion is an age-old leftist tactic. Pat Buchanan has pointed out that communists back in the 30s were advising their followers to describe opponents as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic in order to silence them. Words like tolerance, diversity, hope, and change are carrot words for liberals. As long as we don't delve too deeply in what the left actually does when they use these words, they sound pretty good. Well, liberals can and do if by tolerance you mean allowing people to listen to radio commentators that liberals don't like, or if by diversity you mean people might differ in skills and abilities or might want to choose from diverse healthcare options. The same rule applies for liberals' stick words. Racist, sexist, hate-monger, and greedy have no inherent and consistent meaning for liberals that would enable a reasonable listener to discern and apply a set of standards in order to evaluate an accusation. And that was from the chapter about, what is this? Let's see. We'll just say it's tactic number 4. Words mean what liberals want them to mean. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little motivation.
When you want to give up, when it doesn't look like things are going to work out and things are working against you, and you run into difficulties, and you've done everything you can, you run out of money and run out of friends, and you can't borrow, and anything that can go wrong, it will, and at the worst possible moment, and everything else. How do you handle that? What can keep you in the game where you can retreat and maintain a sense of integrity even when your dream seems so far away and you can't reach it? What you can do is keep yourself strong, keep your head clear, operate with a strong sense of integrity. Here's what you know deep in your heart: if anybody has done it, you know it's possible that you can do it.
You've got the brains, you've got the stamina, you've got the vitality, you've got the interest, you've got your life ahead of you, you've got the future. But if anybody can do it, you can do it. If one of us can do it, hey, we all can do it. There is nothing you can't accomplish.
Have you ever heard people say, look here, I've done everything I can do. I'm only human. And when they say I'm only human, they're saying it from the perspective that I'm limited. You can only do so much. No. Most people give up on themselves easily. You know the human spirit is powerful. There's nothing as powerful as the human spirit. You can't destroy. You can pervert it, but you can't destroy. The possibilities for you are unlimited. If you're in a rebuilding process, if you're coming back from adversity and devastation, it's unlimited of what you can do. See, a dog can't be anything but a dog. A tree can't be anything but a tree. Human being, you've got unlimited potential. You can put effort on you, and by concentrating on you and developing you, you can transform your life wherever you are right now. And at some point or another, we're all going to get knocked down. The people who lose, they stay down, and they look for something to blame, giving themselves a reason why they stopped. But the winners, they accept it. They take responsibility for it. They learn from it. They grow from it. And they find a way to get back up.
I will never quit. I will persevere and I will thrive on adversity. I hold myself to that standard. I will be physically harder and mentally stronger than anything that comes against me, my family, my business, my brothers, my sisters, my team. I will be the one that is physically harder and mentally stronger, and I will work to maintain that position. And what that looks like, it looks like fucking hell. It looks like hard work. It looks like suffering. It looks like a dedication that people don't understand. And it is that. But at the end of all that shit, my friend, the bigger the struggle, the bigger the peace.
Regardless of how bad today was, when you feel like quitting, which you will, do not quit right now. That's a motion. Quit tomorrow. If you can keep quitting tomorrow, you can do anything.
You've been in it for 3 years and you about to quit. You've been doing it for 5 years and it don't look like you think. People are looking at you crazy. You put all your money in it. You put all your time in it. Hold on. You put too much in it to quit now. You close. You about to drop out. You going too far now. Hold on. You ain't quit now. Hold on. But this is my 6th time taking it. You gonna pass on the 7th. Hold on. But you better get something from all that hell you've been through. You close, boo. Don't give up now. You close, my brother. Hold on.
Don't allow that inner doubt in you to talk you out of it. You ignore that inner voice. Don't judge the possibilities for what you can do based upon the circumstances, because the circumstances won't determine who you are. It is you and you alone that determines who you become. You must work on yourself continuously. You want to read books that inspire you and motivate you over and over and over again. And as you continue to work on yourself, you will begin to expand your vision of yourself.
Keep moving forward. You got to keep moving forward. I just need you to keep moving. I need you to make up in your mind that the only way you can lose is if you quit. I just need you to keep going. And so you're going to have to learn to wrestle with it. You're going to have to learn to fight with it. You're going to have to put in a little bit more sweat, a little bit more blood, a little bit more tears. If you tell that thing, I'm here just like you here, and I promise you, I ain't leaving without the degree. I will not leave without that goal. I will not leave without that dream. I will not leave this university until I'm successful. You got to fight with that thing and tell that thing, you will quit before I quit. You'll give up before I give up. We gonna do this thing all night long, but I'm telling you that I'm not going to let you go until you bless me.
Decide that when things become challenging, and they are, that you're not going to personalize it, that you're going to look at it, and you do whatever you must do in order to work things out and learn from it. You will always be faced with a series of God-ordained opportunities, brilliantly disguised as problems and challenges. If you've lost your job, don't say that I've been laid off. Just say I've been given an opportunity by the universe to find my life work. Now you become an active force in your life. Now you're the one, rather than running from things as they begin to change, you become a change driver, because you know that you've got the power within you to make the difference. This energy that you have, that's more powerful than anything that can ever happen to you.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of meditation.
Dear soul, right now you've arrived at a moment of possibility. A moment where the boundaries of time, space, and fear begin to dissolve. This is the gateway to the quantum field, a realm of pure potential where your thoughts shape reality and your healing begins from within. Feel your body soften. Gently close your eyes. Take a gentle breath in and slowly exhale. Feel your awareness expand. Everything in this universe is energy, connected, vibrating, alive. You are not separate. You are not broken. You are part of this vast, intelligent field, and within it lies your power to transform. Now gently bring your awareness to the feeling of fear. Where do you carry it? In your chest? Your belly? Your mind? Fear is not your enemy. It's a messenger, a signal from your nervous system trying to protect you. But you no longer need to live on high alert. You no longer need to carry this weight. In the quantum realm, fear is just another frequency, and frequencies can shift. Breathe in and exhale all the tension. You are safe here. Imagine now a soft light, vibrant, intelligent, surrounding you like a gentle mist. This is the frequency of quantum healing. It doesn't come from outside you. It is you. With each breath, invite this light into the parts of you holding fear. No judgment, just presence. Repeat softly in your mind, I release what no longer serves me. I forgive myself for holding on to fear. I allow healing to move through me. You are not your fear. You are the awareness behind it, and that awareness is limitless. Now visualize yourself standing in a vast space of glowing light, the quantum field. You are not small here. You are luminous, magnetic, powerful. See yourself rising from the past, free from fear, embodying clarity, strength, and peace. Repeat within, I am aligned with the energy of healing. I am powerful beyond belief. I reclaim my light. I reclaim my truth. Let this energy anchor into your body. Let it ripple outward, blessing every part of your life. Gently begin to bring your awareness back to the present. Wiggle your fingers. Feel your body supported by the earth. Know this, the journey has already begun. Every breath you take in awareness, every moment you choose love over fear, is quantum healing in action. You are not defined by the past. You are the creator of your future. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for remembering your power. And thank you for being part of this great awakening. Breathe deeply once more. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes. You are free.
And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a posting on X from an account called Asian Dawn.
で組閣があって、
組閣の前に連立協議がね。
連立協議があって、どっちから先に行こうかな。まずちょっと総裁選終わったばかりなので、ちょっとこれ票数というか何があって、高橋さん勝てたのかということで、この国会の様子をワイプで抜いていただきながらで構わないんですけれども、今。
And that it was a discussion about former Japanese Prime Minister Kishida, who doesn't look happy that Takaichi won. He supposedly compared her to the Taliban because she has extreme views. Back in a minute. Thank you. And this is from an X account, and the Polish guy. It's an interview between an English woman and a Polish, I assume he's an official. It doesn't say. But Polish official gets it wrong. I'll explain why.
How many refugees has Poland taken?
0.
And you're proud of that?
If you are asking me about Muslims illegal immigration, none, not even one will come to Poland. Not even one if it's illegal. We took over 2 million Ukrainians who are working, who are peaceful in Poland. We will not receive even one Muslim because this is what we promised.
But I asked not about illegal immigrants. I asked about refugees. And Jean-Claude Juncker, the Commission President, says that you're racist. You sound proud of the fact that you haven't taken any refugees.
Of course, because this is what our people are expecting from our government. That's number one. This is why our government was elected. But this is why Poland is so safe. This is the reason why we had not even one terrorist attack. Look at the streets in Poland. And we can be called populists, nationalists, racists. I don't care. I care about my family and about my country.
Okay, so first of all, she lied. She says, I didn't ask about that. I asked about refugees. No, she didn't. She asked about Muslims. Are you proud that you have not taken in any Muslims into your country? So, and then the other things that she's saying is, she says, so-and-so calls you a racist. And then she goes on and asks, are you proud of this? And she uses tone of voice to try to bully and intimidate the person that she is interviewing. This is, by the way, an example not of informational interviewing, but of motivational interviewing, the kind of interviewing that you would get from a police officer or a lawyer conducting a deposition. Anyways, the other thing that she, like I said, she does the tone of voice situation and calls him a racist, but does it indirectly. What he should have done, instead of saying, I don't care if they call us a racist or whatever, is to challenge her. Call her a liar if necessary and say, nobody calls me or anyone in Poland a racist, and you don't believe for a second that I'm proud to exclude anybody. Okay, so you challenge her. Forget about what it is that she's saying, because again, all she's doing is playing games. So you put the burden of proof on her. She's going to make this arbitrary claim that somebody called you a racist. She provides no evidence, no proof whatsoever. She now is trying to put the burden of proof on her interviewee to prove that he's not a racist. That's the game that's being played here. Now, he was smart enough not to go for that, but in the process, he basically tarred himself as a racist. I don't care. You can call me a racist. You can do better than that. And that is simply by going at the questioner and saying, you don't believe that I'm a racist for 1 second. Because if you did, you wouldn't bother to interview me. That kind of thing. So he put up resistance. That's good. But he could do it in a better way. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, what does the phrase, if you're explaining you're losing, mean in debates? This was said by Ronald Reagan, speaking of political campaigns. From the perspective of your audience, if you have to explain yourself, you come off looking desperate to convince. As a consequence, you lose the high ground. From a more philosophical perspective, when you have a clear conscience and strong conviction towards the positions you take, your values, truth, and direction, you don't need the opinions or consent of others. As a consequence, you don't need to explain yourself. However, if you yourself are not convinced of the validity and truth of your position, or you can't fully justify your choices, then you continue to expel words in an attempt to create the illusion of certainty. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now from another X account, as a matter of fact, it's Nick Sortor, a journalist a journalist that was arrested, I think, in Portland the other day. But anyways, this reads, just in, El Salvador President Nayib Bukele just banned all public schools from using leftist ideology and inclusive language on students. The United States needs to do the same. No federal funding for schools who indoctrinate our children with trans lies. Now, the concern that I have here is that the left is very skilled. They operate in a subtle and fairly nuanced way, and they used to brag about being subtle and nuanced. But anyways, and they operate in a way so that they position themselves as the defenders of freedom by saying kids should be free to transsexualize, and then setting up the Republicans and conservatives to be dictatorial and promoters of despotism, because that's the way this looks. I personally think it's a great idea of not having these kinds of things as described in schools. I think that's a great idea. But is it a great idea to have the government force that, to write a law banning that? Isn't that then putting us in the position when we as conservatives and normal people are pro-freedom, pro-rule of law, going to look like despots and dictators? I think that the sentiment is excellent, but the execution needs some work. We need to find a way of defending values without promoting or encouraging a despotic or dictatorial attitude. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Back in a minute. Thank you. So here on X, on James O'Keefe account, it says, quote, stayed anonymous for fear of retaliation, unquote. What if the millions of people who felt this way just simultaneously spoke up and told the truth? What can I do, James? Quote, unquote. Tell the truth. It's not external. It starts within. It starts with you. And I'm reading this because this is an example of the cult of fear that we have in our country. We're all afraid, but the problem is we don't know exactly what we're afraid of. It's this vague fear, okay? Vague anxiety. If I open my mouth, something bad might happen. One of the ways to deal with this is because very often what people will do, you'll see it on television, where people will go out and put a kick me sign on their back. They think, well, I'm a conservative, so I should go out and announce it to the world, put on a MAGA hat, go walking around with this MAGA hat on, and suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. And I keep saying it's not necessary. You don't have to do that. But anyways, the point is that when people see that, when they see somebody on television being subjected to rough treatment because of the fact that they wore a MAGA hat, it discourages them. They think, I better keep my mouth shut. I better not say anything at work. That's no good. So how do you deal with this situation? For instance, let's say somebody comes up and asks you, are you a conservative? Are you a MAGA supporter? The first thing, remember, they like to remain anonymous because that way they can achieve transparency, quote unquote. And what you need to do is expose them, and you do it by simply responding with something to the something along the lines of "you first." Okay, that's one way. Another way you can do is with a question, like when they come up and say, "Are you a MAGA supporter?" And you can respond with, "Oh, you voted for Donald Trump, didn't you?" And wait and see what the response is. Okay, because the point is to get them to expose themselves and say, I'm a Democrat or a Trump hater or a Trump lover or whatever, then you know who you're dealing with. The being anonymous, being transparent allows them to, when they approach you, hey, are you a MAGA supporter? Then they're hoping that you're going to just assume, especially if they say it with a smile on their face and they say it in kind of a happy tone, then they're hoping that you're going to just assume that they're a MAGA supporter as well. Then when you go ahead and say, well, yeah, as a matter of fact, I am, bang, you get punished. So again, are you a MAGA supporter? And then you ask them, or tell them, you first. Or you simply ask them, oh, you're a Trump supporter, right? And see what comes back. If they come back and say, as a matter of fact, I am. As a matter of fact, I voted for Trump. Now you know who you're dealing with. And if they come back and say, well, no, screw Trump, then again, you know who you're dealing with. Now you're forewarned. Now they can't surprise you. Because that's most of the fear, is being surprised. So remember, you don't have to wear a kick me sign on your back in order to be a conservative. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from a book that's called Good Inside. What's the opposite of understanding? For this argument's sake, it's convincing. Convincing is the attempt to prove a singular reality, to prove that only one thing is true. Convincing is an attempt to be right, and as a result make the other person wrong. It rests on the assumption that there's only one correct viewpoint. And then my question is this supposed to be convincing? Further, Convincing has one goal in mind, being right. And here's the unfortunate consequence of being right. The other person feels unseen and unheard, at which point most people become infuriated and combative because it feels as if the other person does not accept your realness or worth. Feeling unseen and unheard makes connection impossible. Understanding two things are true and convincing one thing is true are diametrically opposed ways of approaching other people, so a powerful first step in any interaction is to notice which mode you're in. When you're in one thing is true mode, you're judgmental of and reactive to someone else's experience because it feels like an assault on your own truth. As a result, you will seek to prove your own point of view, which in turn makes the other person defensive because they need to uphold the realness of their experience. In one thing is true mode, exchanges escalate quickly. Each person thinks they're arguing about the content of the conversation when in fact they're trying to defend that they are a real, worthy person with a real, truthful experience. And again, is this convincing? Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little clip of Nick Sorter, who had gotten arrested in Portland, being interviewed about the incident.
So they threw multiple punches at me. They broke my camera by hitting that. So I was on the ground at that point. I tried to swing. I missed. I saw the opportunity to get up and get away. And that's when I went over to the police officers, which I thought, maybe they'd help me. But no, instead they threw me in handcuffs. This is going to backfire on them tremendously. It already is, okay? People knew that something out here stunk and that it was corrupt and that the police they take the side of the violent criminals that are here every single day, assaulting ICE officers, assaulting journalists. And then a reporter comes and, tries to embed deep within the chaos that's going in out here, and he's the one that gets arrested. So
there you go. Now, he's right when he says something stinks. There's some kind of police corruption, but he didn't quite identify what in the police department it is that's corrupt, and it's the unions. All of the police departments apparently around the country are all unionized. Now what police departments are doing, because they are trying to, of course, get increases in pay and benefits, is they are, and they've realized that one of the issues for getting that pay and benefits is public relations. And remember that their increase in Portland for the Portland police, the increase that they're getting in terms of pay and benefits comes from the Portland residents. It doesn't come from Nick Sorter. It doesn't come from me. It doesn't come from the state of Oregon. It comes from Portland residents. So what the police department is doing is they say, okay, public relations, we're going to be filmed no matter where we are, what we're doing, we're going to be filmed. So what is high public relations value and what is low public relations value? Arresting Antifa people, especially if they're local Antifas, is of low public relations value. Arresting somebody that's interfering with Antifa is high public relations value. The people, the voters, in the city of Portland are more likely to like and enjoy and cheer on the arrest of Mr. Sorter than anywhere else. So that's going to then be a good thing in terms of, again, when it comes, their contract is up and they need a new contract and they want an increase in pay and benefits, the people of the city of Portland are more likely to give it to them. So if you want to end the corruption, the thing is you have to do away with collective bargaining for police officers. I didn't say unions. Okay, I used to say that, and then I realized that the mistake there, because anybody can unionize. Freedom of association. You want to form a group, a club, whatever, you can do that. But there's no such thing as a right to collectively bargain. There is no such thing. So that each city has to get rid of it and put police officers on a pay scale. What do they call it? I don't remember. Anyways, so you have get them away from collective bargaining. That's the corrupt part. So for him, the other part of this is, again, he's out looking for trouble. He got arrested because he went looking for trouble, and he found it. You don't have to do that. You don't have to go out and look for trouble. You don't have to put a kick me sign on your back in order to be a true conservative. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the first part of Chapter 4 from Ayn Rand's book, Return of the Primitive.
The communists are involved, among others. But like the others, they are merely the manipulators, not the cause of the student rebellion. This is an example of the fact that whenever they win by default. Like germs feeding on the sores of a disintegrating body. They did not create the conditions that are destroying American universities. They did not create the hordes of embittered, aimless, neurotic teenagers, but they do know how to attack through the sores which their opponents insist on evading. They are professional ideologists, and it is not difficult for them to move into an intellectual vacuum and to hang the cringing advocates of anti-ideology by their own contradictions. For its motley leftist leadership, the student rebellion is a trial balloon, a kind of cultural temperature taking. It is a test of how much they can get away with and what sort of opposition they will encounter. For the rest of us, it is a miniature preview in the microcosm of the academic world of what is to happen to the country at large if the present cultural trend remains unchallenged. The country at large is a mirror of its universities. The practical result of modern philosophy is today's mixed economy with its moral nihilism, its range-of-the-moment pragmatism, its anti-ideological ideology, and its truly shameful recourse to the notion of government by consensus. See my article in the May and June 1965 issues of the Objectivist newsletter. Rule by pressure groups is merely the prelude, the social conditioning for mob rule. Once a country has accepted the obliteration of moral principles, of individual rights, of objectivity, of justice, of reason, and has submitted to the rule of legalized brute force, the elimination of the concept legalized does not take long to follow. Who is to resist it, and in the name of what? When numbers are substituted for morality, and no individual can claim a right, but any gang can assert any desire whatever, when compromise is the only policy expected of those in power, and the preservation of the moment's stability of peace at any price is their only goal, the winner, necessarily, is whoever presents the most unjust and irrational demands. The system serves as an open invitation to do so. If there were no communists or other thugs in the world, such a system would create them. The more an official is committed to the policy of compromise, the less able he is to resist anything. To give in is his instinctive response in any emergency, his basic principle of conduct, which makes him an easy mark. In this connection, the extreme of naive superficiality was reached by those commentators who expressed astonishment that the student rebellion had chosen Berkeley as its first battleground and President Kerr as its first target, in spite of his record as a liberal and as a renowned mediator and arbitrator. Ironically, some of the least mature student spokesmen tried to depict Mr. Kerr as the illiberal administrator, said an editorial in the New York Times, March 11, 1965. This was, of course, absurd in view of Mr. Kerr's long and courageous battle to uphold academic freedom and students' rights in the face of those right-wing pressures that abound in California. Other commentators pictured Mr. Kerr as an innocent victim caught between the conflicting pressures of the conservatives on the Board of Regents and the liberals on the faculty. But in fact and in logic, the middle of the road can lead to no other final destination. And it is clear that the rebels chose Clark Kerr as their first target, not in spite of, but because of his record. Now project what would happen if the technique of the Berkeley Rebellion were repeated on a national scale. Contrary to the fanatical belief of its advocates, compromise does not satisfy, but dissatisfies everybody. It does not lead to general fulfillment, but to general frustration. Those who try to be all things to all men end up by not being anything to anyone. And more, the partial victory of an unjust claim encourages the claimant to try further. The partial defeat of a just claim discourages and paralyzes the victim. If a determined, disciplined gang of statists were to make an assault on the crumbling remnants of a mixed economy, boldly and explicitly proclaiming the collectivist tenets which the country had accepted by tacit default, what resistance would they encounter? The dispirited, demoralized, embittered majority would remain lethargically indifferent to any public event. And many would support the gang at first, moved by a desperate, incoherent frustration, by a need to protest, not knowing fully against what, by a blind desire to strike out somehow at the suffocating hopelessness of the status quo. Who would feel morally inspired to fight for Johnson's consensus? Who fought for the aimless platitudes of the Kerensky government in Russia, of the Weimar Republic in Germany, of the nationalist government in China? But no matter how badly demoralized and philosophically disarmed a country might be, it has to reach a certain psychological turning point before it can be pushed from a state of semi-freedom into surrender to full-fledged dictatorship. And this was the main ideological purpose of the student rebellion's leaders, whoever they were, to condition the country to accept force as the means of settling political controversies. Observe the ideological precedents which the Berkeley rebels were striving to establish. All of them involved the abrogation of rights and the advocacy of force. These notions have been publicized, yet their meaning has been largely ignored and left unanswered. 1. The main issue was the attempt to make the country accept mass civil disobedience as a proper and valid tool of political action. This attempt has been made repeatedly in connection with the civil rights movement. But there, the issue was confused by the fact that the Negroes were the victims of legalized injustice, and therefore, the matter of breaching legality did not become unequivocally clear. The country took it as a fight for justice, not as an assault on the law. Civil disobedience may be justifiable in some cases when and if an individual disobeys a law in order to bring an issue to court as a test case. Such an action involves respect for legality and a protest directed only at a particular law which the individual seeks an opportunity to prove to be unjust. The same is true of a group of individuals when and if the risks involved are their own. But there is no justification in a civilized society for the kind of mass civil disobedience that involves the violation of the rights of others, regardless of whether the demonstrator's goal is good or evil. The end does not justify the means. No one's rights can be secured by the violation of the rights of others. Mass disobedience is an assault on the concept of rights. It is a mob's defiance of legality as such. The forcible occupation of another man's property or the obstruction of a public thoroughfare is so blatant a violation of rights that an attempt to justify it becomes an abrogation of morality. An individual has no right to do a sit-in in the home or office of a person he disagrees with, and he does not acquire such a right by joining a gang. Rights are not a matter of numbers, and there can be no such thing in law or in morality as actions forbidden to an individual but permitted to a mob. The only power of a mob, as against an individual, is greater muscular strength, i.e., plain, brute physical force. The attempt to solve social problems by means of physical force is what a civilized society is established to prevent. The advocates of mass civil disobedience admit that their purpose is intimidation. A society that tolerates intimidation as a means of settling disputes, the physical intimidation of some men or groups by others, loses its moral right to exist as a social system, and its collapse does not take long to follow. Politically, mass civil disobedience is appropriate only as a prelude to civil war, as the declaration of a total break with the country's political institutions, and the degree of today's intellectual chaos and context dropping was best illustrated by some conservative California official who rushed to declare that he objects to the Berkeley Rebellion, but respects civil disobedience as a valid American tradition. "Don't forget the Boston Tea Party," he said, forgetting it. If the meaning of civil disobedience is somewhat obscured in the civil rights movement, and therefore the attitude of the country is inconclusive, that meaning becomes blatantly obvious when a sit-in is staged on a university campus. If the universities, the supposed citadels of reason, knowledge, scholarship, civilization, can be made to surrender to the rule of brute force, the rest of the country is cooked. 2. To facilitate the acceptance of force, the Berkeley rebels attempted to establish a special distinction between force and violence. Force, they claimed explicitly, is a proper form of social action, but violence is not. Their definition of the terms was as follows. Coercion, by means of a literal physical contact, is violence and is reprehensible. Any other way of violating rights is merely force and is a legitimate, peaceful method of dealing with opponents. For instance, if the rebels occupy the administration building, that is force. If policemen drag them out, that is violence. If Savio seizes a microphone he has no right to use, that is force. If a policeman drags him away from it, that is violence. Consider the implications of that distinction as a rule of social conduct. If you come home one evening, find a stranger occupying your house, and throw him out bodily, he has merely committed a peaceful act of force, but you are guilty of violence, and you are to be punished. The theoretical purpose of that grotesque absurdity is to establish a moral inversion, to make the initiation of force moral and the resistance to force immoral, and thus to obliterate the right of self-defense. The immediate practical purpose is to foster the activities of the lowest political breed, the provocateurs who commit acts of force and place the blame on their victims. 3. To justify that fraudulent distinction, the Berkeley rebels attempted to obliterate a legitimate one, the distinction between ideas and actions. They claimed that freedom of speech means freedom of action, and that no clear line of demarcation can be drawn between them. For instance, if they have the right to advocate any political viewpoint, they claimed, they have the right to organize, on campus, any off-campus activities, even those forbidden by law. As Professor Peterson put it, they were claiming the right to use the university as a sanctuary from which to make illegal raids on the general community. The difference between an exchange of ideas and an exchange of blows is self-evident. The line of demarcation between freedom of speech and freedom of action is established by the ban on the initiation of physical force. It is only when that ban is abrogated that such a problem can arise. But when that ban is abrogated, no political freedom of any kind can remain in existence. At a superficial glance, the rebels' package deal may seem to imply a sort of anarchistic extension of freedom. But in fact, and in logic, it implies the exact opposite, which is a grim joke on those unthinking youths who joined the rebellion in the name of free speech. If the freedom to express ideas were equated with the freedom to commit crimes, it would not take long to demonstrate that no organized society can exist on such terms, and therefore, that the expression of ideas has to be curtailed and some ideas have to be forbidden, just as criminal acts are forbidden. Thus, the gullible would be brought to concede that the right of free speech is undefinable and impracticable.
And that was the first part of Chapter 4 of Ayn Rand's book, The Return of the Primitive, The Anti-Industrial Revolution, and it's read by Bernadette Dunn. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host and the only true conservative in the United States. Today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there and reminding you that atheism doesn't exist.